I did the for you because you don't have your
Oh,
headphones.
I don't have my headphones on.
You missed
Wait a
it.
minute, let me get hooked up. Okay.
Are we for sure live?
Well, I'm not seeing that we're live. Just a minute. There we are. Hey. Ooh.
All right.
Nothing like a little bit of feedback.
Well, I hope everybody had a good week. Ours was better.
Not over.
It's not over,
Definitely not over.
but it was better.
Mm-hmm.
Hope's got some exciting stuff coming up tomorrow evening through the
Mhm.
weekend. The weather's been kind of miserable here.
It's kind of like spring.
Yeah, well, I guess it
Well.
is April showers.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting those for sure.
Yeah. What is the
April
in like a
showers.
lamb and out like a lion or something like? Was that April? Anyway, I can't remember. Long time ago. But we've had a lot of rain. So.
Yeah, we're supposed to have a good bit for the rest of the week. So.
Mm-hmm.
But had better sales. Yesterday was not as great.
Today's trying.
Yeah, today's already better
Yeah.
than yesterday.
Wednesday is typically not a great day for us anyway. So yesterday being lower, not necessarily surprising. What was surprising was the good sales we had over the weekend
Yeah,
and Monday.
yeah. We typically don't take a lot on Saturday morning, and we did, so that was good. I think Hope's kind of giving you all a breakdown of some of that on the other
Yeah,
videos.
I've been doing some short updates. We are currently undergoing some changes.
As
No.
always.
As always, yeah. So we reached the 1 year mark, and we are pushing how many items in inventory?
Probably like 2,300.
Close to 23. I think it was like 2280 something this morning,
Yeah.
and a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, I think she mentioned before we kind of had a, 2,500, 3,000 goal. To be honest, I remember when I thought that was an astronomical number. So just so you know, it's possible.
It is. It's possible in a year, and I also remember thinking when we were listing. Gosh, I think I remember when we hit like 200, and I was like,
Oh
oh
my
my goodness, how can these people have thousands of things? How could people have 10,000 items in their inventory? And I remember we were watching someone at that time who hit the 10,000 mark, and then he was like, this is too much.
Yeah,
So
'cause,
actually, there were several people. I think some people that were kind
at
of
the same
following each
time,
other.
I think they were, kind of part of a group, and they were like, yeah, we're not in the storage business. So bragging about having 10,000 items, it's not necessarily a good thing. I mean,
No.
it did give them a lot more regular sales than we have because they have more things to choose from. But it also meant that they made a bunch of bad purchases. And so a lot of stuff that they had, they've had for years and no one's ever looked at it. So then they started the super painful process of, downsizing that number by, okay, I've had this thing in here for 4 years. Let me sell it for $1 on
I was
whatnot.
about to say, let's back and dump it. So, which doesn't help regular sellers that have a reasonable amount of inventory.
Yeah. So, that is the bad thing about when people start dumping things, and that hurts comps. So
Yeah.
there's, and I really need to write this down and do a different video on comps because
It's tricky.
it's very tricky right now. And you can need to be very careful because, especially if you're, on the fly out there in the thrift store and you pull up comps and you're really only concerned about sell-through rate and how much it's going to sell for, and you are not paying attention to what it is comping.
Right. And the season, and what are you coming out of a season or going into a season? Because, well, at least with clothing, it is very, well, I mean, it's seasonal. So shorts are going to sell for more in the spring than they do in November. And so when you go to look at them and you're looking at the past 90 days, well, the past 90 days, if you're in March, the past 90 days was fall and winter. So,
Yeah, I mean, the seasonal stuff I expected. And in my head, I've always had the mindset that, yeah, I need to factor in what season this is, specifically because we sell clothes. But what I was not factoring in, so I don't know how long that we've been, misled by the sell-through rate and the comp, is the fact that it's not even the same product. We could be sitting there looking at I don't
like
know.
a Brooks Brothers, or like you're looking at an iZod and it pulls up a Brooks Brothers as a
Yeah,
comp.
and you're like, those are not even remotely close to the same comp.
No.
I don't know why it does that. The only thing I can think of is that it's using the same kind of algorithm as in someone's searching for a short sleeve polo shirt, and so they're getting all kinds of stuff if they didn't say a specific brand.
Yeah.
But they might say a specific brand, and the algorithm might say, yeah, but have you considered these?
Maybe.
So,
I thought that initially when I saw that happening, it was only when I was using the Terapeak or whatever it's called on the
Research.
phone app, the research button. But now I'm also seeing it when I'm looking for comps when I'm creating the listing. So I had several things last night that were doing that.
yeah, I mean, you just need to be really careful. And I can show you, it's probably easier to try to do a screen share version of that one,
We
but
need to do that.
I can show you how I take it a couple steps further, and I really want to know specifically what's my competition. So what are the listings, and it's got to be the same type of listings, and so you have to alter several things. You have to know what the pluses and the minuses mean in there that didn't used to be there, and so and then you still have to
Play with the order.
yeah, because like what's also lumped in there is maybe somebody has put, instead of putting $14.99, they put $1,499 and never caught it. And so there's that number. Then there's somebody that's got a lot of about 50 items. So that number's jacking you up. So then you have to, like when you're up there, you have to go minus lot, and so that you don't see all the lots. And then maybe yours is not vintage. And you got a bunch of vintage stuff in there. And so, it's not as easy as it sounds. And too many people just do the real quick version, don't look at
Pull up
anything
the
else.
number.
So anyway, that's a whole separate discussion. But, I watched a video not too long ago about this guy was talking about companies, businesses, and there's plenty of businesses out there that are trying to be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And by being huge, they can put other people out of business. The bulk of people, just being honest, because it's painful for someone who likes to do custom construction, most people just want it cheap and fast. That's what they want.
The whole cheap, fast, and good.
Yeah. So, but there's, he was doing a video on companies that focus more on quality and less on quantity. And so what that does is it limits your customers. But they get more fulfillment. I get more fulfillment when I'm doing something that's custom from somebody who really appreciates custom than I do by doing just the same old cheap junk, that someone just wants it done and get out of my
IKEA
way.
quality.
Yeah. So like track homes versus high-end custom. There's a big difference. Different people are wired differently. I'm not saying that, a lot of these guys who are doing the 10,000 items, I got a warehouse, I got 15 employees working for me, like Dave Ramsey, I got over $1 million in payroll kind of deal. I'm not saying they're not making a lot of money, but for certain people, that's a lot less fulfilling. Also, I am not that young anymore, and so even Dave Ramsey is stepping out of his deal. So we just ran across a Think Media thing where Sean interviewed Dave, so that's why we're talking about that. But anyway, so for us, if we made six figures, would that be great? Yeah, that would be great. Is that our priority? No. No. And so that's not typically
Yeah.
everybody else is talking about six figures.
Well, I think also that's where it is important to know what your goal is. if you're starting an eBay business or a reselling business or any business whatsoever, is to know what you're trying to build. And what we're trying to build is not a legacy business to pass down to future generations or to make, create a company that is big enough to hire multiple people. Like what we are looking for is simple. And so our model is going to be very different than than a major corporation model. Like there are plenty of eBay resellers who are employing and filling up warehouses and buying lots and buying pallets and all of that. And that's just not the model that we're looking to build. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with that, because their needs are different. Their desires are different.
Yeah. I mean, I've always wanted to have a legacy business, but, like I'm the only one that really wants to work construction. So, unless other people actually get super serious about eBay, then there's no need to build a legacy business because they're not interested. Now, let me just say that if you were to do this right, you could sell your eBay business, as crazy as that sounds. And there's been plenty of people who will buy somebody else's eBay business. Someone says, I want out. And they just take it over and, work out whatever to buy the rest of their inventory. Just people want it gone, done, because the alternative for someone who wants out is they just hit the off button and they donate everything and they get nothing for it. So, but somebody gets the benefit of the fact that there was a good bit of work to put into to get them to that point. So anyway, all that to say is that we are currently restricted size-wise. We are not interested in a storage building.
No.
Now, even though we have 26 acres, so we could drop a container. In fact, we got a tractor trailer sitting down at the corner, but it's way off.
That's a commute.
Yeah.
And I don't want to commute.
And
I like the commute of walking down the stairs.
Yeah, I mean, what would be better is if everything was on the same level. So that's coming in the future, but
Good or bad? I don't
Yeah.
know. Right now it keeps us exercising and moving, and there's the upside
until I need one of those chairs that I can sit in and it brings me up.
and it carries you down. Then you can just hold the inventory
Yeah.
and carry it
and
back
down.
up.
You have to meet me at the bottom to get the inventory. on my
Either
left.
that or we've got to train a dog to go
Yeah,
retrieve
that's
it. And
dogs
good luck
can't-
with that.
Yeah. We got passenger princess, which I guess some of you may have seen in one of Hope's videos.
Yeah.
She's super fired up about going to the post office.
Yes. When she sees little blue packages,
She's ready to go.
she loses it.
It's hilarious that she sees that, and so sometimes I have to go, I'm not going to the post office right now.
Right. It is funny because she can see me with clear packages that I'm taking downstairs to put in
That's
inventory,
different.
and she knows the difference.
Yeah, she can go, you got that by yourself.
Yeah.
Just let me know when we're going to the post office.
And then you
But-
can't move fast enough.
I'm not saying we have a very tall garage basement, and there you could go up, but once again,
Should you?
age, and for me, probably over the last couple months, I've been really struggling with my shoulders, and I'm years of doing construction is taking its toll, and so I need to. There's only so high I can go, and of course, Hope has the different
A vertical challenge.
vertical challenge there, so she can't even reach them. But if it's at her level, she can get it, and that's something to consider. At our age, so if you're watching this in your late 50s, then you have to start thinking about, like the way I kind of try to view things, as excited as I might get about something, I say, can Hope do this by herself? If I'm not feeling good, or something happens to me or whatever, like, can she do this by herself? Because if not, then we got a problem.
We do.
So that helps us regulate what's right size. Where, because I have for most of my life, I have gotten a bunch of people bunch of crews, taking on a bunch of projects at one time. But that's me. So-
Not me running it.
And so, when we start thinking about a bunch of employees and warehouses and all that kind of stuff, quickly it's no, because that's not something that she would even want to pursue, much less maintain. So, those are things you have to think about. And if you find that balance, then you might prevent yourself from some nightmares. We saw this when we were looking at homestead stuff, and everybody's seeing these young homesteaders and going out there, and the romantic videos that you're watching about their lifestyle and everything. And then an older couple came along, and everybody was applauding them because they wanted to do this. Now they were older than us at the time, but and they went all in, bought a piece of property, and then realized that they were not young.
They had some health challenges and had to sell
And
back out.
they shut it completely down. So, hopefully you will hear this and go, okay, what is the right size for me? Because what's the right size for us is not necessarily what's the right size for you. Some of you may be looking at, hey, I don't even have a garage. I don't have
No.
a basement. I do have a little bit part of a spare bedroom.
Which is a wonderful place to start.
So don't do suits.
Yeah, don't do suits. But
Don't do construction
but
equipment.
if somebody is selling, baseball cards, they're set for when it comes to storage.
Yeah.
So
So-
clothing is a little on the easy side because if we were doing a lot of everything selling, then that doesn't store as well as 2,300 items of everything inventory takes up a lot more room than what we have
Yeah.
devoted to inventory right now.
I mean, we've got plenty of room to drop a shipping container, but the problem is, we were just discussing this earlier, is that why our stuff works right now in our basement/garage is that between it being 50%, the backside is completely covered and the front is
Underground.
not. But being 50% underground, and then the fact that our ductwork leaks down there, so
It's basically heated
so
and cooled.
it's not going to be exactly the same, but it's comfortable down there. Well, then you're not going to run into any damage with clothing. But if we were to take and put it into a non-climate controlled
Container.
then you got moisture and you got mold and all kinds of stuff that just from construction, I watch people not understand the concept of having controlled airspace and a non-controlled airspace, and when they touch it to each other, that's where mold comes into play. So we would have to be very careful about if we were to ever consider doing that, and it would not be closed.
No.
The few people that we know that have put some stuff in some trailers and that kind of stuff, well, they had to go to the trouble of rigging up a unit that would both heat and cool and
And insulate.
insulate, and so there's all kinds
Cool.
of.
So we've reached the point where we are at 2,300 items in inventory, are pushing that, and realize that, well, I think on top of the sizing of the inventory, we were realizing we had some other things going on that basically eBay was taking up a lot more of our time than
Yeah.
we really wanted. We felt really convicted that we needed to reprioritize. We said that we were going to do starting a business that would be simple so that we would have time to focus on priorities. And we'd spent a year of working hard. I think sometimes you have to make some sacrifices for a period of time, but that can't become the norm. And it had become the norm
Oh, yeah.
for us.
And it was
7 days a week.
only
and-
looking like it's going to be worse.
So, what are we doing?
Well, we didn't have any margin. So,
Mm-hmm.
and if you've seen any of my older videos, you'll know that I talk about margin a lot. And we saw that we were once again guilty of letting too much stuff creep into our daily life that was preventing us from having any margin. And this is when you have to start saying, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, then I'm not going to do this. And what if I want to do this? Then maybe I should not do this. And that simple concept eludes us, even as much as we talk about it.
Yeah.
So, there was a time, I can't remember if we told the story before, but there was a time back when we had a construction company up in Charlotte, and I had about 15 to 18 guys, and we worked 6 days a week, and I was paying a lot of overtime, and we were exhausted and
not making any money.
not making money.
Because we were
and-
paying it all out in overtime.
And I was having a hard time making it to like Wednesday night church, and really too exhausted to be coherent on Sundays. And so we're like, you know what? It's time to cut some of this back. And if it cost us money, it cost us money.
It was
and-
a scary move.
Yeah, it was. We also had started a Bible study with the guys on Friday. So sometimes, we met super early, and sometimes it ran longer than it should have, and that cut into some of the time. But that was a priority for me, and so in that being a priority, it meant that either God was going to provide, make up the difference, or somehow it was going to work, or it was not. One of the two.
Well, here's another compounding effect there was that not only were we trying to make money, and we were trying to pay ourselves as well, but you also were doing work for another company that had a schedule. And if you didn't meet certain deadlines on certain days,
We didn't get paid.
you didn't get paid or they penalized you.
Yeah.
There were financial penalties for not completing the work. So we not only were struggling with trying to make money, but we were also trying to meet a schedule. And so making the decision to cut back on hours and say we're not going to work on Saturdays was the first thing you did.
Unless it was an emergency.
Okay.
But that
And-
was not going to be the norm. The norm was we were working Saturdays.
Right. And then you wanted to make it a priority to be able to make it to church on Wednesday night. And you had a long commute. These guys also had a long commute to home. So you started leaving early on Wednesdays, like shutting down at, say, 2 o'clock in the afternoon,
3:30,
something like that. And then the Bible study on Friday morning.
And people getting paid at 2 o'clock, wanting to go to the bank at 2 and not come back. And so, it was a step of faith to make the adjustments. To be honest, I had reached a point where I couldn't keep it up anymore. And so I really didn't have a whole lot of a choice, but that's not the best way to make that decision. But
I think sometimes God puts us in that position, though, so that we don't have a choice. Like, if you're not going to listen to me, let me take the choice away.
and initially the guys, there was some pushback because they weren't going to get all of this time and a half that they were getting. But they also, weren't having a lot of fun on the weekends either. So I don't think they realized that until they spent a couple weekends at home. And then they would show up on Monday in great mood.
Rested.
Great moods, like super fired up.
So what happened over time?
Well, what we found is that we were more efficient. There was less fights on the job, less arguments, more clear thinking, and less
Fewer-
mistakes.
Yeah. Which were, if you make a cut mistake, that costs money.
Yeah, and it's not just you miscut some material, but then you got to cut it again. So there's time on this end, and the guy over here is waiting on it. And he's waiting. There's time both ways. There's a lot that goes into all that. But if you're rested and dialed in, then you make less of those mistakes. And some of the mistakes that get made on some of those big houses were, $10,000 mistakes, and those were big ouchies. So.
Yep.
It's not like a shirt that, somehow we didn't describe correctly. But we saw a huge difference. So I'm not saying that now all of a sudden we were making double the money. I'm just
No.
saying we were working less and being as productive, if not a little more productive. So the client was happy, and we were happier people, and there was a huge difference across the board.
And also, well, there's the productivity part of it, but there's also the clarity, just the clarity of mind. And if God's speaking to you about something and you're not super fatigued all the time, then you're more open to hearing what he's telling you to do.
And for us, being honest, we were doing this. Now we really tried to say from about, well, we claimed we were going to shut down no later than Saturday at 5 o'clock, which normally didn't happen. But we were not touching anything until Sunday night after dinner. But that was still not really enough time. I found myself Saturday afternoons, my brain was turning to mush. And so, you get more irritated about stupid things, but also, you start making mistakes, and you start doing stuff that's unproductive.
And you start answering customers on the weekend when maybe you should have not answered it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're not rested and you're going to say something you shouldn't have said, thank goodness God prevented a lot of that, because normally that would not have been how I responded to certain things. But you know what? If we had probably made those adjustments a long time ago, we probably would have had better listings and less likely to have a phone conversation with somebody. One of the bad things about what we do, and this is kind of true of anything, is that you have to go out of your way. So you can't just put a dimension somewhere and assume that somebody read anything. You also can't assume that in this situation that anybody's got your back. So
You have to quadruple protect yourself.
you just need to go out of, like, to the point of being ridiculous, in order for the people who are just real quick looking at something on their phone. I can't hardly stand to look at anything on my phone, much less I can do the text messages on the phone.
It's because we're old.
Yeah, but also because the phone reminds me too much of somebody calling because they got a problem on a job site. So, but I can imagine the number of people that are buying stuff on a phone. I can't see that picture. I don't know if that's good or not. And so, they're not looking at item descriptions and seller
reading.
notes and any of that kind of stuff. But, but we also make mistakes. And so if they only saw the title and didn't see the rest of it, then, they might assume something that's not really true. Then you got to defend yourself, and that was time that you wouldn't have to do if you'd
Right.
been rested and done it right the first time.
And so they're frustrated and you're frustrated and money's going back and forth and everybody's losing money.
Everybody's losing.
Yeah.
And nobody's happening, and then you get a negative comment, and, so it just goes downhill from there. So all that to say is that we started, I can't remember initially. I think when we first started listing, it was random. Then we had a set number,
And then we kept upping it.
It kept upping it, and I think we were doing 12 plus. Now, when we say 12, that's 12 new things plus. I was always doing in listing sales similars on top of that, but that number varied. But our emphasis now is less new things because, the inventory, when we say we've got 2,300 listings, that doesn't count the stuff that we've already sold.
Right.
So, the number that we've actually bought and listed is a good bit more than that. And so,
I need to look that number up.
I meant to check
I
it
don't know what the number
before,
is.
before we got on. But but what we currently have in stock is 2,300 items, and we're not selling as much as we were listing. And so that number was just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So depends on who you talk to. Some people will say, hey, the more items
Don't
you
know.
got, the more you sell. We want to move towards the better items we have.
Right.
They'll sell as much as what they've been selling before, maybe a little bit better, and we will list less.
I heard someone say about sourcing things, and they said pretty much everything will sell
Eventually.
eventually. The question is, how long do you need to hold on to it in order for it to sell?
How long do you want to store it?
So,
How long do you want to dance around that pile of boxes in the garage before you say enough?
so I don't want to dance around it forever. I don't want to say, we finally sold this and we just had it in inventory for 3 years. I don't want that to be a thing. So I'm sure that we have a couple of things that we've had since April, May of last year. But thankfully not many.
Yeah, I don't think we have as many as you think. That gets into a different video that I would like to talk about later on inventory. But one of the things on my side, I've been focusing on in-listing sales similar a lot.
Your side of the business is
Yeah,
what you're saying.
because Hope's listing the new things, and she's getting better things. So we're not buying those things that people don't that they don't purchase anymore, just because I said for $1 somebody will buy this at some point. Okay.
Well, I don't think that we actually said it out loud like today, that what we've done is reduce the number of new listings to 6 items, 6 new listings per day.
Which you're not going to find any guru tell you to do that.
No, not to cut back.
But for us, we were tight budget. So we just didn't have the money to keep doing that if they weren't selling. I have, I think, done a video in the past where you need to just source from your own bins. And that means go find those things that have been, been listed for 6 months to a year and find out why. And you would be shocked at the number of things that if you start doing that.
We found a lot that were like, sometimes it happens when you do sell similar. Information gets pulled from the original listing that's not correct.
You don't change it all.
And sometimes it was just me just putting in the wrong information, typing in the wrong number, typing in the wrong color.
Well, and we didn't know how to answer questions when we
That's
first
true.
started.
I did not understand the difference between fabric and material. It's like they're both. You go to a fabric store, right?
And we knew because obviously we bought clothes before, but we knew that just because someone said it was an extra large doesn't mean that it's going to fit me. Well, let me just go back and say nothing extra large fits me. So, but just because this is a 2XL, it doesn't mean that it's actually that size. Because ironically, if you buy something like Duluth, I actually need an XL, not a 2XL. So, all manufacturers, so you just can't assume anything. We have to remind ourselves often. Just because I think or I feel like this is whatever.
I thought.
Doesn't make any difference.
Thought you have.
It either is or it isn't. And so, plus, we kind of shied away from all this stuff about, cozy core and all that business. Mainly because most of the stuff we sell is guy stuff.
I was about to say, it depends on your niche, and our niche is not searching cozy core, cork core. They're not looking for the cores. They're looking for.
Here's the irony.
I'm looking for men's pants.
It hit me pretty hard because if we're honest, because a lot of stuff we look at be like stuff that I would buy and wear. It's more grandpa core. When did that happen?
Well, you just became a grandpa,
Yeah,
so.
I am, but
But now you're wearing the badge, proudly. But a year ago, you weren't quite sure you wanted to be grandpa.
Yeah, the stuff that I thought was grandpa core is probably great grandpa core.
Probably so. But things change, and we relate more. And now that you are your niche. So you're not going to go search for cabin core.
Yeah.
You're gonna search for mountain wear, hiking pants,
And
carpenter pants.
We no longer, because you would never catch me dead on anything that was what is it called? the skinny legs or whatever.
Oh, skinny jeans?
Whatever that is. Like who in the world?
Whatever that is.
Who wants to wear that
It's
stuff?
already out, so don't worry about it.
Anyway, the deal is that anything that's got like 50 million cuts in it and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
I'm not going to wear that.
No.
Now, jeans that I had that I worked on the job site that had natural holes in it, yeah, I'm not throwing those away.
For a
but
little while, you'll wear those.
but I'm not going to pay $100 for a pair of pants that's been cut all up to pieces.
Uh-huh.
Funny thing is, my dad helped invent a lot of that stuff back when he worked for Lee Blue Jeans, which was a company in Vanity Fair. In fact, he spent many a trip to Germany working on machines that now, if you've ever seen anybody do it, like they on purpose, destroy brand new jeans for the look. So
Yeah.
that's how when I was in high school, I got to wear all kinds of crazy jeans that no one else had because my dad was experimenting and bringing them home in my size.
That was cool.
It was cool. So
So we've changed up our listings,
so we cut them back.
cut them back.
But I did, to a certain extent, because I just had so many to fix. The amount of new ones that she cut back, I added to my in-listing sell summers in order to just work through. There was just stuff that we just did not want it to stay there forever. And we need to figure out, is it something that's ever going to sell, or do we need to bundle it, or does it need to
Just go back.
donate, whatnot, whatever the deal is. And so the only way I could fix that was I was going to have to go through
Address them.
and address them. So I did up that number for her on my side, but her listings are stuff that we purchase less, but we really spend time making sure that we don't come home with an uh-oh, and we still do that.
We do, but
You should never just see a logo and get fired up and not pay attention.
even if there are tags on it. So,
Yep. We had a really nice polo shirt that
uh-huh.
was kind of a wreck when we got it home, and so that's where
Can't-
you.
Yes, ripped all the way up the side. I don't know how we missed that, because the fact that we have cut back means we are shopping for less. So that means one of two things: either we can save money on sourcing, or we can afford to pay up some for some items. But it does mean that what we walk in the door of our home with and prepare to list is just better choices, because we've had fewer items to pick, to source, and so we were able to be more careful and more intentional about looking at the sell-through rate. We still are not finding items that are like 30% sell-through rate, but we try to aim for a decent one.
Not yet, but but we also, because the repair list was getting longer and longer, we are
Right.
as much as possible avoiding sewing buttons on
And we still end up with enough of that.
Yeah,
But
we tried not to get belt loops that need to be repaired and different things like that, or some that were like the crotch is worn out, so that goes in the trash.
But we have made one change that has made me, it's created more work, but it's made me very, very happy. And that is that we are starting to work on the construction inventory that we have in the basement. And a big part of that is because we need the space.
Well,
So-
we need the space, but we also wanted to source less. And that stuff's already taken up storage room down there, and we got a ton of it. So, it was time. Now, I do want to be completely honest that when you get to where you're doing the same thing and you're getting pretty good and fast at it or whatever, and then all of a sudden you switch gears. Because I personally was totally shocked at how
Complicated.
like it's doorknobs. Like, why in the world are these so many questions? And they're questions that you're like, what do you mean by that? Because A, that's not how any contractor buys doorknobs. But B, I don't know if you mean this or this. And good luck finding out what that is.
Well, so far in the things that I've listed, which has been some doorknobs, some light fixtures,
Plumbing
some
fixtures.
plumbing fixtures, when I go to find other sell similars,
They're just not filling them in.
they fill in like 10 things. And I was working on, what was I working on? Light fixture or a recessed can or something a couple of nights ago. And I had dug deep and I filled in every single question in under item specifics. Do you know that there's a limit as to the number of item specifics? And so I had to go back and delete some of the item specifics so that it would list it.
Because you were too specific.
Cannot win.
Yeah,
So-
there needs to be a whole separate video on that because that, once again, if you don't want me to fill out all the blanks, don't give me all the blanks.
Right. Yeah.
But
So
it's a ridiculous amount of blanks for some of those, and I was like, okay, well, we don't have a choice right now because we got a garage full of this stuff, so we need to sell it, and so we're going to do that. But those are things that when you're thinking about buying a pallet full of whatever, you better try one or two.
yeah, again, I'm going to say my hat is off to you if you are an everything seller.
Oh, good Lord.
And everything that you sell, you have to research, and in order to be accurate, you do a lot of time researching. So I just think that there might be a lot of people out there that are putting way less effort into their listings, and if they can do that and feel good about it,
Yeah, I don't know
Good.
if that's really.
I don't know.
I mean, the competition is pretty big right now, so I'm not sure you can really
you can
do
afford to
what you
do that.
what you could do in the past. But I don't know that you
Yeah,
can
I think gone are the days that you can just go into the thrift store and pick up 5 pairs of jeans and throw them down on the garage floor and take photos of them and be confident that they're going to sell. But I don't
or
think that works
sell
now.
fast.
Yeah. So we've cut back.
Yeah. The other
To
thing
those
is
6.
that I'm clearest in the morning, refreshed. I can think clearly, and so I have said priorities for the morning need to be more like Bible study type stuff, and just conversations that we have together, and not jumping out of the bed and straight into eBay. And because
Right.
I've reached a point now. I'm not saying that came in the first month, but I reached a
No.
point now where I can listen to some music and do listings in the evening and not screw
If you
up.
don't have to think about the words.
Yeah, and if I'm not trying and I don't screw up. But it took a minute to get to that point. But so you have to know when you're primed, because it's going to be counterproductive if you do listings when you can't think clearly, because you can turn one listing could take you hours instead of minutes, and it also helps that we, for the most part, have been doing the same thing over and over again. But now that we're trying to clean out the garage, we're having to do a little more.
It's a little
we
more
have
challenging.
We have to limit that. To
But we're
like,
pacing ourselves.
Yeah, not trying
So,
to do
one a day, and thankfully we have a lot of duplicates. So
Yeah,
I have a
'cause-
lot of light fixtures that are identical. So
exactly identical, because I bought a truckload of them when I got them, and so that makes it, once you've done one and you do it right, then that's when you can do a sell similar, and just a matter of changing the inventory number.
right. So that's making me happy. So as I go into the weekend, which is another thing that's making me happy, I have some things that are basically kind of on repeat that I can just sell another. Like that listing is already done because I can just do sell similar and it's exact same item. So
That made doing, answering all the 50 million questions for that light fixture or whichever
A
one.
little bit less
A little
money.
easier, because once you've done it once, the next 20 times is going to be easy.
uh-huh.
So there's positive and negatives to all that, but it's not something that we probably pulled too many things out at one time. I got overwhelmed, and that's not normal for me. So it just has
Too many, do you mean the construction things?
Well, the fact that trying to think of doing all of those different things in one day.
No.
Like that would be no big deal to me, but at this point in my life, it's a bigger deal than it used to be. So
I think when I brought up 2 or 3 different things, I was trying to figure out which one was going to be the easiest one to start on.
and I just
so-
saw
You just
Okay.
saw a pile, and started
Let's
hyperventilate.
let's not take on, more than we can handle because we're having a
Yeah.
bad week or whatever at the time. So,
It was a bad week, and I do think it's really interesting, though, that we made this decision on Friday, and so we started making the change then, and sales were good over the weekend, surprisingly good.
in fact,
Somebody's trying to make you an offer now,
right now.
but I also don't want to fall into the camp of thinking that it's cause and effect, like that God's given us sales because we did this, but I think it's overall, it's about obedience, and also it's about just trust. You were sharing something yesterday about, the Israelites, they needed food, so God provided them manna. And then they needed water, and like they were in the middle of the desert as they're wandering, and where are they going to get water? Well, we don't, they didn't know where it was going to come from. And when they were wanting meat, they didn't know where that was going to come from. But God's like, is my arm too short? So whether we have an increase in sales or if God brings another income stream, I don't know what the answer is going to be. But I know that we're being obedient in scaling back on what we're doing on a daily basis in order to make Him priority number one, make our marriage a priority, make our family a priority. And it's easy to say those things. It's a little more difficult to actually practice them when your back is against the wall and you're struggling and you're like, do I work on a listing or do I just go spend time with my grandson? It's not easy. Those
The funny thing is, it's not the first time for
No.
us. So sadly, we have to keep learning lessons. Seems like every 10 years.
apparently we don't learn them very well. We
Well,
just
that's true.
experience them.
That's true. I mean, if we've got anything that we've got experience in, this might be one of them that we can tell you what not to do for sure. But we, I mean, you're along for the journey to see. And once again, this is not about we're not doing this and then thinking,
We're not the gurus.
we're not thinking we're going to get six figures by doing it this way, but we are in prayer that this is going to be that we'll have more peace and that we'll be more focused and enjoy the time. And the time, is we don't know how long we have. So,
Yeah, very, very rude awakening. I think we shared a couple of weeks ago, another YouTuber that we follow who is also a reseller, lost her husband. I mean, she's rough. Well, she may be younger than us, but I don't remember where you heard this, that most men live to the age of about 76.
76. So midlife is actually 38. I missed the memo.
Yeah. Because we like to think that we're middle age right now, but the reality is people don't live to be 120.
Yeah, it's like I can't remember how John MacArthur put it lately, but like I'm on
This
the
is
home stretch.
I'm on my last trip around the sun or something like that.
No, I think it was like I'm on the home stretch. So whatever he said
Yeah.
was, we don't know. There's a song that we really, really like, and one of the things that he says in that song that always gets me is, today may be the day. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The McWhorter song.
So
Come, Jesus, come. Yeah. And we also probably naively think that when one of us does pass, we always talk about me being the one who's left, but it may not be me.
well, historically, that's the way our family operates.
Well, but we don't do anything according to the norm.
Lord help us if you go first.
Yeah. Because you might starve. You're going to have to move in with somebody.
Somebody look like a bunny, but you just don't ever know. I mean, by the same token, the older I get, I don't need to be in a situation where there's stuff that I can't handle. I mean, to be honest, even the 26 acres is a little bit more.
Oh, it's way more than than what we need right
Yeah.
now.
So,
And
there's a way that you can live on 26 acres doesn't require nearly as much work, and we're a lot more simplistic than most people are, but because most of our stuff is woods, and someday we'll get outside and show you some of that. But you can easily turn this into where that in itself requires more energy than the two of us have put together. So
well, I do think, though, that it is good for us. eBay has been a wonderful thing for us because, well, A, we needed the income. But I think even if you don't need the income, I think the physical work, the mental work is good for anybody. Even if you don't need the income, you don't need to work financially, but it's just good mental and physical.
yeah, and if you're doing this as
exercise.
a hobby, I think at one point we might brainstorm and kind of talk about this. Is if you're just doing it because I know this will never happen to us, but there was a time that people would retire and be bored. It's not happening for us, but
No.
but if you find yourself in that situation and you just want something to do that actually is productive and not consuming stuff, then there's a way to go about it that you also don't turn it into more work than you were interested in. So
Right.
you have to be careful who you listen to. But just to kind of to land this plane, the things that we're working on is better listings. We're trying to reduce how much we're storing.
Yes.
So that we're reducing how much money we spend on sourcing because we already have other things that we need to eliminate. And doing all this and fixing old listings
Yeah.
will hopefully at least give us the same amount that we were making not too long ago, and that our store will get 1% better every day. And one of the ways that this will get better for all of us is if y'all would participate in a community event. So
Right.
you
Oh,
wanna talk
yeah.
about that?
We do have, I'll put the link in the description of this video as soon as we're done. But we have scheduled a virtual seller meeting. This is eBay sellers this is supposed to be the North Alabama
matter.
reseller group, but we're doing this virtually, especially the first time. So it's going to be May the 8th, which is 2 weeks from yesterday, I believe. May the 8th at 7 o'clock at night. No, I think it's a Thursday.
Oh, my word.
Anyway, it's on May the 8th. I know that. And you can follow the link that will be in the description of this video to go register for that. It's going to be on Zoom. It will be a very short meeting, just basically, hey, let's briefly introduce ourselves and let's talk about when would be a good time to meet for future meetings. And do you want to try to meet in person? Do we want to keep this virtual, or do we want to do a hybrid of the two?
We also want to ask questions like, what's your biggest pain point right now?
Yeah.
Because giving if we do these like every 30 days or so, then that gives us time to dig, and also gives time for other people to contribute
Right.
and come up with solutions for each other. Because we're constantly going, what in the heck?
Yeah.
Like for instance, we just like what does the 30-day return policy mean? When does the time start and when does it stop?
Right. And I've also seen some listings recently that say 60-day return policy. So
Yeah.
anyway, a lot to dig into. So we don't
Where's
need
the
just
15-day one. That's where I'm-
all we don't just need all new people. Like if you're experienced and
Help us out.
you've got something to offer. And so that's what we're looking for is community. That's the reason why we're doing what we're doing here on YouTube. And this opportunity just opened up for us to apply to do this with eBay. So it is an eBay sanctioned group. So like we're not making anything off of it. It's completely free. And it will be available through the eBay community site to get registered for that. But we are looking to build community, whether you're a part of that eBay group or if you're a reseller and you just want to continue to follow us on this YouTube channel. We want to hear from you. We want to know what your pain points are, what your suggestions are, because we have plenty of problems that we're willing to share with you if you're willing to share some solutions with us. So,
Yeah, one of the
Let's-
problems that I'm going to be spending some time while she's out having fun is just inventory. And you think it'd be crazy for us to be at the 1 year mark and saying, okay, let's work on our inventory system. But after you've done it for a year,
you realize where the holes are.
like, oh, why didn't we record this? And why didn't we record this? So the fact that we're just now kind of doing this little chart about sales and stuff. So I'm working on the beginnings of revamping our spreadsheet about that. And we'll talk about that one more next week because I plan to spend a lot of time between now and next Thursday about that, unless somebody puts in the comments below something that's a bigger pain point for them or not. But I would encourage you, if you haven't started keeping track of your inventory,
And record all the things.
yeah, all the things you're
There's-
like, I don't need to do that right now. Well, later you're going to forget,
Yeah.
especially at our age.
Record when you bought something, where you bought it, what you paid for it, when you sold it, what you sold it for, all the things.
There's a lot. We'll save
Yeah.
that for next week. So, until next week,
Until
because
next week.
somebody is getting ready to.
I'm getting ready to work hot and heavy on listings
For 24 hours.
24 hours because
And then she's out.
Tomorrow afternoon, I'm checking out and I'm going away for the weekend with my daughter and son-in-law who are hosting a youth leadership retreat, and I'm going to provide childcare for the one sole child that's there that is our grandson. So
Well,
I'm
I'm
super
encouraging
excited.
her to take her microphone and not this one, but the little one, and record some of that. But
Yeah.
don't get your hopes up
Yeah.
because when Teddy's in the room, the grandson
I'm totally distracted and smitten. But I also want to apologize. If you have been watching some of my recent videos, I have been struggling with the sound issue, and I'm working on it. I really am. I'm trying some different things, but
I think the last one that you just posted, which would have been, I guess, maybe this morning for some reason, it didn't go
Yeah,
out yesterday.
yeah.
But anyway, I think that one,
it's better.
the sound is better, and hopefully somebody would put in the comments about.
Tell me if it's better, but if it stinks, let me know that too.
Yeah, we need to know. Like, hopefully these lives sound good because
Okay,
they
yeah.
sound good in here.
In
but-
your ear, in my head. In my head, it sounded great.
Yeah, but if the sound is bad, then let us know because we have found some issues, but we're still working on it. That's
We're
one.
newbies
Yeah,
all around, so we're 1%, 1%
almost it.
every week.
So, anyway,
Right.
y'all have a great weekend. God bless.
Bye.
Thank y'all for coming. We appreciate it. See you in the back.